Brazil has reported record new cases of COVID-19 as over 67,000 tested positive, while Argentina recorded 5,782 cases. The United States continues to be the worst hit with more than 3.9 million cases and over 143,000 deaths. In Pakistan, 32 more people lost their lives and 1,763 tested positive overnight. The death toll has risen to 5,709 and the cases have crossed 269,000. Globally, more than 622,000 people have died from the virus and over 15.1 million infected. Israel says it's increasing the number of troops along its northern borders, hinting at a possible escalation in Syria or Lebanon. The Israeli military says the decision was made after a recent situational assessment. And in football, English champions Liverpool beat Chelsea by 5-3 in a 8-goal thriller at Anfield to cap an entire league season unbeaten at home. Injured Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson lifted the EPL trophy in a closed ceremony after the match in front of an empty Kop. News in detail after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back now. Brazil has reported record new cases of COVID-19 as over 67,000 tested positive, while Argentina recorded 5,782 cases. The United States continues to be the worst hit with more than 3.9 million cases and over 143,000 deaths. Globally, more than 622,000 people have died from the virus and over 15.1 million infected. More in this report.
The surge in new coronavirus cases around the world has stalled the global push to reopen businesses to avoid economic catastrophe. The disease is setting new grim records in the US, Brazil, Mexico, and now Argentina and Peru. As the virus burns through Latin America like fire, China has offered $1 billion loan to the region's countries to help them buy vaccine when one becomes available. But WHO Program Executive Mike Ryan says the world needs to get over untimely excitement at vaccine news.
We have to be able to look ourselves in the eyes, and we have to be able to look at our communities and ensure them that we have taken every precaution to make sure these vaccines are safe and effective before we go giving them to general populations. In order to make that happen, we can shorten that time, but realistically it's going to be the first part of next year before we start seeing people getting vaccinated.
Spain is re-emerging as Europe's hotspot for COVID-19, with the health ministry reporting over 9,000 new infections in the last week alone. The aggressive resurgence of the new coronavirus has now pushed South Korea and Australian economies into recession. Aussie Treasury Minister says the road ahead is extremely challenging.
The impact of the coronavirus has led to a significant decline in tax receipts and a large increase in government payments. This has driven a dramatic change in the budget's position. These harsh numbers reflect the harsh reality we face. The economic outlook remains very uncertain.
China has reported 22 new cases, with 19 being domestically transmitted. South Korea's new daily virus cases are still hovering around 60 for the second straight day, as locally transmitted cases spike due to cluster infections.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has reported 32 deaths from COVID-19 in the past 24 hours, raising the total to 5,709. The Health Ministry says 1,763 new cases were reported overnight as the tally crossed 269,000. The ministry said over 213,000 people have recovered from the virus so far. It said there are now over 50,000 active cases in the country, among which 1,382 are critically ill. Sindh is the worst hit province with over 115,000 infections, while Punjab has reported over 91,000 cases. In the Khyber Pakhtunkhwa province, the tally of cases is nearly 32,000, while there are over 11,000 infections in Balochistan. In Azad Jammu and Kashmir, a group of foreign journalists has visited the Poonch sector along the line of control and interacted with the victims of Indian firing from across the line. They also witnessed a 3-tier Indian surveillance grid and obstacle system deployed 4 kilometers from the LOC. More in this report.
Kashmir is one of the most heavily militarized area on earth, with over 900,000 Indian troops for nearly 8 million people. The situation has intensified after New Delhi stripped the region of its autonomy in August last year and subsequently imposed a curfew. With unrest prevailing there, India has escalated tensions with Pakistan at the line of control to divert the world's attention from their illegal actions. But foreign media correspondents who visited the Pakistani side of line of control took stock of India's ceasefire violations.
We visited today a Chiri court and we met so many victims in that area. I would say here that it was very free for us to meet several people, and we could listen to them. We could listen to their stories as well. Some of them were victims of the Indian shelling on the border.
A small boy, he injured by the bullet on his shoulder. So I feel very sad with this situation.
Ceasefire violations from the Indian side have increased since the BJP government came to power in 2015. According to reports, Indian troops have committed more than 11,800 ceasefire violations since then. The Indian government has repeatedly refused to take foreign delegations to their side of the LOC.
The Nuclear Threat Initiative has ranked Pakistan as the most improved country in nuclear assets security, leaving India behind. In its 2020 Nuclear Security Index, the global monitor said Pakistan ranks 33rd, while India is in 38th place in terms of protection of nuclear facilities. The report says Pakistan improved by adopting new on-site physical protection and cyber security regulations. The NTI said Islamabad also improved insider threat protection. It said Pakistan's security and control measures score increased by 25 points due to actions taken to strengthen its regulations. Pakistan also improved in the global norms category. The monitor said Pakistan scored progress in the second largest improvement for regulations in the index since 2012. The NTI assesses countries' progress on nuclear security, highlights security gaps and recommends factors for improvement. Israel says it's boosting the number of troops along its northern borders, hinting at a possible escalation in Syria or Lebanon. The Israeli military says the decision was made after a recent situational assessment. The military did not provide any further details regarding the development. The decision follows heightened tensions after the killing of a Hezbollah fighter in an Israeli airstrike. Syrian officials say 7 soldiers were wounded in the air raid on Damascus late on Monday night. Israel also closed the airspace over the occupied Golan Heights on Tuesday. The United States says it's deeply concerned over an escalation in violence and civilian casualties in Afghanistan. Special Envoy for Afghanistan Zalmay Khalilzad urged Kabul and the Taliban to show necessary restraint ahead of intra-Afghan negotiations. Khalilzad said Washington condemns Afghan government airstrikes in eastern Herat province as well as the Taliban's recent raids. This comes as 45 people, including civilians and Taliban fighters, were killed in government airstrikes in Herat province. Tensions between Kabul and the fighters are on the rise again, with both of them targeting each other's posts. Now, China has lashed out at a new UK policy allowing Hong Kong residents to claim British citizenship. In a statement, Beijing's embassy in London says the policy violates international law and interferes with China's internal affairs. The embassy said Beijing will issue a stern response if London did not reverse its decision. It said the Chinese side urges the British side to recognize the reality that Hong Kong has returned to China. Beijing said London should objectively evaluate Hong Kong's national security law and immediately correct its mistakes. Earlier, British Interior Minister Priti Patel said Hong Kong people with British national overseas status will be able to apply for special visas to live in the United Kingdom. This could eventually lead towards citizenship starting from January 2021. China has urged the United States to immediately stop slandering Beijing under the pretext of cybersecurity. China's Foreign Ministry spokesperson Wang Wenbin said Beijing firmly opposes all forms of cyber crimes. Wang said Washington has been conducting cyber crimes around the world under the guise of its security programs like PRISM. He said Washington's accusations of cyber aggression tantamount to a thief crying foul. The spokesperson said the activities of US-backed hackers can easily trigger strategic misunderstandings which may result in serious consequences. Moving on, Berlin says Washington's threat of withdrawing 9,500 troops from Germany is a cause for NATO concern. Defense Minister Annegret said the move will not damage US-German relations but could fracture the alliance. Kramp said the withdrawal of the forces will be seen as a major change in American strategy. Last month, US President Donald Trump approved the withdrawal of more than a quarter of its troops from Germany. Trump took the step after accusing Berlin of not contributing 2% of GDP to NATO's defense budget, as mandated by the 2014 agreement. Well, now, Boko Haram militants have killed 5 aid workers in Nigeria's northeastern state of Borno. In a statement, the human rights group Action Against Hunger said the militants had abducted the workers on 8th of June. Boko Haram circulated the video of the execution-style shooting on social media. In the footage, they warned locals against working for foreigners who they describe as infidels. Boko Haram has been leading violent warfare targeting civilians for more than a decade in the region. Russia says restoration of Libya's territorial integrity is the ultimate goal of a political settlement. At a press conference with his Algerian counterpart, Sabri Boukadom, Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said as long as the Libyans are divided, risk of foreign interference will continue. Lavrov said the situation in Libya demands to bring the warring parties to the negotiating table. He pointed out Russia works with all parties in the conflict as well as the neighboring countries to rebuild the Libyan statehood. For his part, Boko Badom said political dialogue is the only way to resolve the crisis in Libya. Moving on now, Turkey says one of its ships is set to carry out a seismic survey in the eastern Mediterranean. The move has escalated long-standing tensions with its NATO ally Greece. Greece accuses Turkey of attempting to encroach on its continental shelf. Ankara insists the eastern Mediterranean regions where the ship will carry out the survey is part of Turkey's continental shelf. Tensions between the two countries revived after the Turkish Navy issued an advisory for seismic service in waters between the island of Cyprus and Crete. Athens and Ankara are at the odds over claims for hydrocarbon resources. The issue came into focus after Cyprus attempts to explore for natural gas in the eastern Mediterranean, despite Turkish objections. More news coming up after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Now, Ukrainian forces and the self-proclaimed Donetsk People's Republic have reached a ceasefire agreement on the eastern border region of Donbass. After a virtual meeting of the Trilateral Contact Group, the DPR's foreign ministry said corresponding orders will come into force on July 27th. The DPR also said all parties have agreed to ban the use of drones and positioning of heavy weapons in built-up areas to protect civilians. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has hailed the pact, calling it the fruit of rigorous negotiations. The conflict between Ukrainian troops and Russian-backed rebels in Donetsk and Luhansk has killed over 13,000 people since 2014. The UK's leader of the opposition has pressed Prime Minister Boris Johnson in the Parliament over the government's policy on Russia. The remarks follow a long-awaited report on Moscow's interference in Britain's politics. Speaking in the Parliament, opposition leader Sir Keir Starmer said under his leadership, national security will always be a top priority for the country. He said the government took its eyes off the ball. Starmer said the report was extremely serious and asked Johnson why he delayed publication of the report by 10 months. Hitting back, Johnson said Starmer failed to condemn Russia's 2018 chemical attack in Salisbury, where a former military officer was killed. The Premier said there is no country in the Western world that is more vigilant than the UK in protecting the interests from Russian interference. US President Donald Trump has announced a plan to send federal agents to more cities to crack down on violent crime. At a White House event, Trump said he has expanded the Operation Legend to Chicago and Albuquerque and New Mexico. The program mandates deploying federal agents to assist local police in combating what the Justice Department says is a surge of violent crime. Democratic officials in Chicago and New Mexico have welcomed the move but voiced concerns about a possible repeat of the crackdown scene in Portland, Oregon. Trump said the measure will end the bloodshed. He urged Americans to hold the radical left accountable, saying there is simply no substitute for the police.
My administration will be working to remove dangerous offenders sprung loose by these deadly policies and, frankly, by these deadly politicians. America must be a sanctuary for law-abiding citizens, not criminal aliens. My vision for America's cities could not be more different from the lawlessness being pushed by the extreme radical left. While others want to defund, defame, and abolish the police, I want to support and honor our great police.
President-elect of the 75th session of United Nations General Assembly, Volkan Bozkır, will visit Pakistan for a day on July 27th. In a statement, Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said he will brief Bozkır on Indian atrocities in occupied Kashmir. He said India has imposed restrictions on the movement of UN military observers in the occupied valley. Qureshi said India is targeting civilian population at the line of control. Qureshi said Islamabad took foreign journalists to Pakistan's side of the line of control to assess the situation. The foreign minister said India's Hindu supremacist ideology has distorted the fabricated image of a shining India in less than a year. He said Delhi's relations with all of its neighbors have deteriorated due to its Hindutva approach. Moving on, Sudan's government has appointed 18 civilian state governors as a key part of a democratic transition after the ouster of Omar al-Bashir last year. Prime Minister Abdallah Hamdok says the civilian government ruling with the military is working to resolve errors in the trade balance. In a news conference, Hamdok said the appointments complete the structures of the transitional period. The transition government also appointed 2 women governors for the first time in the country's history. Hamdok said we wanted to preserve the balance with regard to women's participation. This comes after protests in Darfur and other parts for civilian supremacy in the administrative sections. Bulgarian Prime Minister Boiko Borisov has reshuffled his cabinet to quell growing protests demanding the resignation of his government. Borisov replaced key ministers of finance, economy and interior whom he had asked to resign last week. Borisov added they were dismissed to stop speculations of working under the influence of a controversial businessman. The cabinet changes are subject to approval by Bulgaria's National Assembly. This comes 2 days after a motion of no confidence in Borisov's government was defeated in Parliament. Now, the US says it will become more active in the Arctic to counter growing Russian and Chinese influence. In an interview, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said America and its allies have been too slow to react to Chinese and Russian interests in the Arctic region. He said Russians and Chinese have become more and more aggressive in the Arctic. Pompeo said he had discussed the Arctic issue with the Danish Prime Premier and called for more cooperation among allies. The US is seeking to halt the Kremlin's Nord Stream 2 pipeline, which would carry natural gas from Russia to Germany through the Baltic Sea. Now, China has successfully launched an unmanned probe to Mars in its first independent mission to another planet. China's Long March 5Y4 carrier rocket blasted off with the probe from Wenchang Space Launch Center on the southern island of Hainan. The probe is expected to reach Mars in February, where it will attempt to deploy a rover to explore the planet for 90 days. Beijing says the probe carries several scientific instruments to observe the planet's atmosphere and surface, searching for signs of water and ice. Christian Dior hosted a live audience-free fashion show in Italy's Lecce. On display was a dazzling celebration of folklore and a tabloid piece. Let's find out more about this unique show in this report.
Dior upped the ante by staging an extravaganza with a live orchestra, opera and dancers performing a modern take on a traditional tune. The French brand arranged a cruise show to present its 2020 fall collection, celebrating the local crafts and traditions of Lecce city. Straddling across a gallery of lights, nestled amongst rich historic architecture and pivoted at the Dome of Harmony, the show was mesmerizing.
Je voulais avoir un œil très positif.
I wanted to have a very positive view, a bright view on things. Inspiration can't come from this COVID when it comes to my way of working. And so we went with an explosion of color, of shapes, of luxury.
Since coronavirus pandemic took the world hostage, the fashion world has come to a standstill. Big names are now organizing virtual shows to send positive energy and to tell the world that they are back in action.
So I say I want to find tombolo. Tombolo is very incredible craftsmanship, is very rare. So I found these women that I went in November and say I would like to realize only one piece because I know that is long, please, but I would like to celebrate this technique.
This fashion show was a very personal project for creative chief Maria Grazia Chiuri. The theme of the show took her back to her childhood in Puglia. Chiuri says she sought to showcase the craftsmanship of Puglia region and help it endure by casting it in a fresh light.
In sports news, we start from football, where the English champions Liverpool beat Chelsea by 5-3 at Anfield to cap an entire league season undefeated at home. Injured Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson lifted the EPL trophy in a closed ceremony after the match in front of an empty Kop. Reds raced into a 3-0 lead via goals from Naby Keita, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Jorginho before Olivier Giroud pulled one back. Roberto Firmino restored the 3-goal cushion, but the Whiskers rode back through Tammy Abraham and Christian Pulisic. Alex Oxlade struck 6 minutes from time, put the result beyond any doubt as the champions moved on to 96 points. Chelsea now need a point against Wolverhampton Wanderers in their fixture to qualify next season's Champions League. Inter Milan were held to a scoreless draw by Fiorentina at the San Siro at Livydas. Juventus moved closer to a 9th successive Serie A title. The result means that Juventus can clinch the title by winning at Udinese later today. Both Inter and Atalanta have 3 games each to play, and the old lady holds a better head-to-head record as well as a game in hand. Visiting goalkeeper Pietro Terracchiano was in supreme form when the Nerazzurri twice hit the post through Romelu Lukaku and Alexis Sanchez. In another game, AS Roma thumped the relegated Spal by 6-1 at the Paolo Mazza to move back into Europa League spot. Elsewhere, Genoa beat Sampdoria by 3-1 and Brescia were relegated after a loss to Lecce by the same score, while Torino drew 1-1 versus Hellas Verona. And now let's have a look at the weather updates across the globe. Well, that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at indus.news. Take care.